Welcome everybody to the first video on my channel, Sports Casually. It's your boy, Andrew, and I'm here to talk about the blockbuster trade that happened last night. The Washington Wizards sent John Wall and a 2023 first-round protected pick to the Houston Rockets in exchange for Russell Westbrook. And I initially wanted to get this video all out last night, but it dropped at like 9 in the night and I had work this morning and I just couldn't end up doing it. I was very tired. So I had more time to sleep on it, to think about it. I went to bed thinking that the Wizards won this trade, and now I have more time to think about it. I'm more adamant on the fact I think that they have won this trade over Houston Rockets because I believe Westbrook's fit on the Wizards will be much better than how his fit was on the Rockets. Now, let me explain. So, for the Wizards, they're getting back the better player. As we know, Russell Westbrook, despite his tendencies, he's still a former MVP. He's still a top 10 point guard in the league. And he wanted out to the Rockets because he wanted to be the number one ball handler on the team, just like he was in OKC. And he wasn't that in the Rockets. Looking back on it, I think it's even a worse trade that the Rockets sent an arm and a leg and Chris Paul to OKC to get him, because you have the top two guys in usage for the past few seasons on the same team. I didn't even know why they would think it would work. They thought small ball would be better, and to be fair, Russell Westbrook was more effective driving into the paint and kicking out to open shooters. And I think that's what the Wizards are going to have him doing more of this season. So the cast around him, I think, will be better suited than what it was in Houston. So as we all know, Houston sent away their big man Clint Capella to the Hawks to get Robert Covington, and didn't really and PJ Tucker played center at 6'5". So the thing I like about Washington is you have Bradley Beal, who has more experience being a number two option. It's going to be upsetting for fans and Washington fans that he'll go back to, they might be a spot-up shooter again, but I don't think that his role will be that diminished. He averaged 30 points this season, well last season, but the system that the Washington Wizards were running, it was like they forgot about defense. They were just like, let's just put all our effort into offense. So I think in a more natural system that Scott Brooks is going to run, where they actually will try to stop people from scoring on them, his points per game will come down to more 24. And now that Westbrook will be taking up ball handling duties, probably back to the 21-24 range. So he has a co-star that could suit him more off ball than James Harden can and Bradley Beal. You have the Latvian laser, Davis Bertans, who will come off the bench and shoot lights out from three, one of the best shooters in the league. You have sophomore Rui Hachimura, who I was very impressed with last season. I think he had a great rookie campaign, and it was unfortunate he got hurt and missed a few games, but I think he could really develop. You have their first round pick this year, Denny, I'm just going to call him Denny, I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name. He's not really a shooter, but I do think what's good about him is he can play, make, and handle the ball, which could take responsibility off of both Beal and Westbrook and open more off-ball movement for the offense. And it could allow Westbrook to cut to the basket more. It could allow Bradley Beal to come off screens and get open threes. I think it could work. And also what I like about the team as well as their big men, Thomas Bryant and Wagner, I'm not going to pronounce his first name, they can shoot threes. Bryant shot 2 a game last season and Wagner shot, I believe, 2 a game in 18 minutes. So playing more minutes, they could shoot about 3 threes per game, which is decent enough for big men, and they knocked it down at decent efficiency. So that's going to create more spacing, clear up the lane for Westbrook to drive inside the lane, because as we know, Westbrook is amazing finishing around the rim and drawing contact and kicking out to open shooters. And a guy like Beal, who I think they will have him like how Steph Curry and Klay Thompson run in Golden State. constantly moving, looking for open shot, getting space away from defenders. And with guys that can knock down threes, I think as long as he doesn't hog the ball and try to take jump shots and 3 pointers because he's not good at them, I think this could work very well for the Wizards. The Wizards, I didn't think they would make the playoffs this season. Well, it depends on how Wall would be able to fit coming off of injury. But now with Westbrook, if they could really get into his system and have him playing like how he was last season before the season got cancelled, because he went on a stretch where he was just amazing and one of the best finishers in the paint around the rim. I think it will really open up the system and get more open shots, and I think they could be a playoff team. Maybe not a high seed, but definitely a playoff team, I say. And okay, to be fair, he didn't work well with his friend. Well, okay, they're still friends. Harden, although they wanted to play with each other. But I think if anybody could have him tone down a bit and take less ill-advised shots, it's his former coach, Scott Brooks. And they wouldn't have traded for Westbrook, knowing the type of player he is and his tendencies, without having a plan in mind that Scott Brooks has, or without talking to Bradley Beal first. I want to hope they talk to Bradley Beal first. But who knows? I think they have an idea how they want to use him and saw how effective he was getting into the paint, taking on the centers. But that remains to see. So let's talk about John Wall's fit and on the Houston Rockets. So yeah, John Wall's fit on this team will entirely depend on how he comes back from his injuries. So he missed all of last season, and he hasn't played more than 70 games since the 2016-17 season. So that's 3 years he's been dealing with injuries. I believe it was a Achilles injury and an ACL injury. John Wall is very much like Westbrook in a sense. They rely a lot on their athleticism. They like to attack the paint. They're both horrible at taking jump shots and 3-pointers. They're good playmakers and passers, and they could defend very well. And all of that can be affected on his injuries that he's been suffering. So if John Wall does not come back, or his athleticism is greatly hindered, he would be, 40% of the player he actually is. Prime John Wall. Because now, like players like Kevin Durant, who did suffer the Achilles injury, but I think didn't require as much of his athleticism as it was the main focus of John Wall's game. So that's one thing to look at. We wouldn't really know until the season starts on the 22nd. So that's interesting enough. But what's a little more interesting on what does this mean for James Harden? So I think now James Harden goes back to 2 years ago MVP James Harden. He has to put the team on his back. I mean, arguably he always has, but he has to put it way on his back for them to get anywhere in the Western Conference, as they're very loaded this season. They lost they lost two key players in Robert Covington, who they traded Clint Capella and I think some other people, I really don't know. So they traded him to the Trailblazers and got 2 first-round picks. Good trade. We get some of the assets you sent away when you traded for Westbrook. And they lost Austin Rivers to the Knicks. The Austin Rivers move doesn't seem that big, but he was a big part of their bench. He could play and make, he could shoot, get to the rim. So his presence would be missed. And the only notable additions they made in the offseason was signing Christian Wood and Boogie Cousins. Am I missing anybody else? No. Christian Wood showed a lot of promise in I think it was 16 or 14 games he played when the Pistons traded Andre Drummond last season. But can he deliver? Can he live up to the hype that he acquired for this offseason? Because people were rating him as a top 5 free agent in the offseason that just finished, and He showed a lot of promise, but can he do that over the stretch of a season? And also Boogie Cousins. Okay, if Boogie Cousins is healthy, then this team will be very dangerous. But Boogie Cousins hasn't been healthy for years, and we're not wishing injury upon anybody, but if you're a betting man, would you bet that he stays healthy for the entire season? I know I wouldn't. So, what kind of role will two of them play? Because they're big men. And I believe the coach wanted to try to maintain their small ball style they had last season. And they could shoot the three, but they'll be mainly effective in the paints. But it depends what the coach wants to do. I forgot the coach's name. And other players around them, they have Eric Gordon, who's aging. He hasn't been shooting the ball too effectively the past few seasons. PJ Tucker, good enough, I guess. Daniel House, but I mean, we saw what kind of guy he is. You know, he's trying to get laid in a pandemic during the playoffs, but whatever. So I think in terms of the supporting cast, Washington not only has the better team, but younger talent that they could develop around Westbrook and Beal if he decides to resign again. And this trade, like, we will be able to see how it pans out for multiple seasons because they both expire. Well, they have player options in 2022, 2023, and they're getting paid on those player options. Both Westbrook and John Wall would be getting paid, I think, close to $50 million. So they'll have to be dumb not to pick it up. So we will see how these players pan out. I believe that the Wizards have more of a plan for Westbrook to use Westbrook. Well, the Rockets, I don't think they have much of a plan, but they just needed to get rid of Westbrook because he didn't want to stay in Houston anymore. So it'll be interesting. Excuse me. It'll be interesting to see in the coming season. I personally hope that they both do very well, but it's going to be a funny situation seeing how John Wall comes back from his injuries. But that's it for everybody. So thank you guys. Like, share, subscribe. I'm new to this. I'll get a proper outro eventually. Thanks.